So we'd like to set the stage this evening by offering some time to the panelists to share a story of hope. And I'd like to frame the question a certain way. We'd like you to share a story of resistance that gives you hope from the work that you do in the world. So whatever movement you're a part of, if you could share one story of resistance. And we'll start with you, Marcia, and then we'll just move the mic down.
First of all, let me just say how honored I am to be here. This is really an incredible evening full of incredible people, and so thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm trying to think of a story of resistance, of hope. There have been so many, to be honest with you. I think one of the challenges of activism is sort of stepping out and not really knowing what you're going to find on the other side. And when we started the demonstrations, by the way, I'm not sure if you know this, but we meet, the Hands Up Coalition DC. Before Christmas, we met every Monday at 4 o'clock in front of the Department of Justice. And when we first put the call out, we had no idea whether it would just be sort of me and my family and my close friends or neighbors, or whether other people would respond to the call. And I think one of the high points of this movement so far is just all the people who have come from far and near to be a part of that space in front of the Department of Justice and to lend their voices, often very strong and very loud voices, saying no to the Department of Justice in terms of the way they treat human beings, both inside the prison industrial complex as well as outside the industrial complex. But one of the things that I think surprised me the most was that we started having a trickle of mothers who would come to these rallies, and we were totally unprepared, to be very honest with you, for the mothers who would just walk up to us and say, my son's name was Emmanuel. He was a 22-year-old boy who was going to Bowie State University, and they would begin to share their stories with us. Inevitably, they would just simply break down in sobs. And then I would see other people who would come out to protest just come up to them and form these, almost like an umbrella around these mothers, and provide for that moment so much strength and hope to these mothers who had all this unrequited pain because their kids are killed and yet there's no answer for them. So that's one thing. And these mothers now that have given all of us so much hope are usually the strongest people in our group now. When we get tired, it's the mothers who are saying, oh no, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be there on Monday at 4 o'clock in front of the Department of Justice. And so now the tables have turned, where the people who sort of stepped forward to participate in this movement are now receiving strength from the mothers who've lost their children. It was unexpected, but that's what's happened in this movement. And I think it's really been a very bright light for all of us. So I have a lot of other stories, but let me stay with that, because that really is the power of motherhood. And I don't want to forget also the power of fatherhood, because in the African community, we were on that boat together, both black men and black women. And the power of our families staying together cannot be underestimated. And so we are now reaching out more and more to black fathers who've lost their children to help us really understand this problem from a family perspective as opposed to just simply from a female perspective. And so, we're beginning to work through these issues, but it's been an amazing experience so far.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know why y'all invited me on here. I'm the one who knows the least amount of information to everybody in the room. Yeah. But it was an experience that I had after George Zimmerman was acquitted in the death of Trayvon Martin. We saw different groups come together, but it faded out real quickly. And so this time around, when we were able to organize DC Ferguson, obviously there's still an element of that still going on and still going on strong, and now it's its own stand-up institution outside of the coalition of the organizations that originally brought it together. And to me, the time from when George Zimmerman was acquitted and the movement in DC up until now, we see a sustained movement around DC Ferguson. It's been over 5 months, and there's still organization, there's still things taking place. And to me, that gives me hope, because we've made progression in turning something from a moment into a movement. And of course, we know every 28 hours somebody is killed. We know that probably even within those 28 hours, there are other atrocities that are going on within the prison industrial complex, and there are other social economic issues in housing and jobs that plague everybody. And although DC Ferguson can't take on all of those issues, a lot of those issues are still tied to the broader issue of capitalism, the prison industrial complex, and many of the worldwide issues as such as Guantànamo Bay. And so me being able to witness within a year's time frame, people understand what it means to just move from something being hot in the news and to just being a moment to saying, okay, next time around we're going to be better organized. So it's not an issue of if it happens again, but when it happens again, we're more organized. And to see that shows progression. And even if the institution of DC Ferguson doesn't, pan out to be much 2 or 3 years later, I know that it's not going to be a question of if it happens again, but when it happens again, I know we'll be even stronger, because we have all of these experiences. And we know some institutions only last but for so long, and then other elements and other things take place. But as an organizer, you look at the progress that you've made, and sometimes all you have is hope. But once you can start to see some progress in some of the things that you're doing, that maintains your hope and it strengthens your hope that, okay, we can get better and better and better and better. And now we see more coalition building, we see more people want to be part of coalitions. But also what I witnessed, which to me is a very beautiful thing, is that it is difficult work working with other people. We come to the table with all of our isms and schisms, but something that I've seen this time is that I've seen many people be able to say, okay, it's not about me, or it's not about my organization, it's not about my ego, it's about the greater good, the greater cause. And I have hope that that's going to keep getting better, that we'll be able to form genuine coalitions and not relationships based upon what we can do for each other, but what we can do to accomplish solving the problem. And so that's my hope is increasing in that, and I'm seeing that this time around. I'm seeing people saying, let's go out to neighborhoods that we traditionally don't go to. Let's reach a demographic of people that we typically don't work with. Let's actually try to put our own funds and energy into this thing. And when we see that happening, we see that in Washington, D.C., what is unique about DC as opposed to any other cities, that you have local, national, and international capabilities to get your message out. And we've been able to do that because we've been able to put all of those other issues to the side, and we've been able to work together longer and stronger and more tactically than I've ever witnessed in my time, being a community organizer and activist in the community. So that gives me hope that, it is going to get better and that we can make some changes. And I've seen some changes happen just within the dynamic of how we organize together. So for me, within the last 2 years, just seeing how everybody got hot, upset, had a couple of marches after George Zimmerman was acquitted, to now you have a situation to where Darren Wilson doesn't even go to trial. But whether he went to trial or not wasn't an issue for the folks that put together DC Ferguson, because they learned that, okay, well, we got issues right here in Washington, D.C. that we need to address, but also we need to be able to show the national community and the international community what we can do and how to strategize and organize, because no disrespect to the stuff that was going on in Ferguson, but the issue is definitely bigger than Ferguson. And that's something that I've been able to witness, so that gives me hope.
Hi everyone, so I just want to thank you all for being here, and I'm really honored to be on this panel. I still consider myself a budding activist, and I have so much to learn from many of you who've been doing this work for many years. So this is a great question. I think about hope a lot. Hope's what brings me to work every day, and then allows me to leave feeling like I'm doing something. So my story is, in 2013, there was a mass hunger strike at Guantànamo, which had near universal participation. We had heard about the hunger strike, I think, in February of 2013, and letters started coming in from a number of our clients. And the situation seemed really dire and really grim. I made my first trip down during the hunger strike at the end of April, and I had no idea what to expect. And when I got there, it was hard. Men who I'd seen just a few months earlier had lost 30 pounds. They were scared, and it was hard for me. It was the first time I had been in that situation and didn't know how I could help and how I could support them. But one thing that was truly amazing was that despite sort of everything that was cruel and unjust, there was the spirit that was alive. They felt empowered. They truly felt like they were affecting change, and each one of them, we met separately, meeting after meeting, said that they did feel like there was this feeling amongst the men that they were sort of stronger than ever. And so that contrast of actually being so frail and so weak, but having spirit that sort of consumes them and makes them feel, for once, that they had agency that they hadn't before, was really remarkable. So I left thinking, well, if they can have hope, so can I. And so when we came back, I think at CCR we really shifted the conversation to telling these stories. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the classification process at Guantánamo, but everything our clients say to us is deemed classified unless we write it down. So during these meetings, everything that they were saying was so powerful, and I knew the only way that people like you could hear it is if I wrote it down verbatim. So I did that, and we had these truly amazing quotes from them that lived on after that trip, and I think it was amazing to sort of see the reaction to people and the support that communities like this gave to the men there. And fast forward a couple of years to this week. Witness Against Torture and others have been doing a free Fahad action to tell the story of Fahad Ghazi, who's one of CCR's clients. And I've met Fahad a number of times, I've heard his words, and there's something really remarkable to see people who have never met him speak his words and feel them. And that's just been so amazing for me to see. And sometimes Guantánamo feels so far away, but tonight in this room, I really feel like we're bridging the gap, and that makes me hopeful.
Well, good evening, and my sincere thanks to all of you. I want to tell a story from a prison also, and this is Pekin Prison. It's a federal prison that's since been closed. But I was there at the time when the kind of iconic pictures from Abu Ghraib first emerged. And I learned about it because women prisoners came racing across the compound telling me, girl, you've got to see what's on CNN. And I went and watched the women who were with me in the room and realized there was a powerful emotion coming through. I think what Marcia testified about women feeling that sense of motherhood and care and concern, that was certainly going on. And there was also somewhat jarring for me, a sense of patriotism that wouldn't have occurred to me. They were asking, what's going on over there? What's happening to our country? And then specifically to me, what can we do about it? And I said, well, not too much, we're in prison. That didn't go down at all. They were with the assistant warden in charge of the women's prison that night, asking for permission to gather out on the oval track every night and every morning when the sun went up, when the sun went down, so that they could pray for peace. And at first there were 12 women, and then there were 30, and then there were 80. And it was a sign of incredible solidarity and witness. But one of the persons in that prison who I think undeniably had the trust of just about everybody in the prison was a woman named Sherry. She ran the gospel choir. She had this onerous long sentence, a tremendous personality. And Sherry was so trusted by everybody that the prison officials gave her the keys to the car, and when it was your release date, Sherry drove you to the bus stop and turned around and drove right back. And I wonder what that felt like for her. And it meant always driving past the men's prison, which was medium to high security, and the median sentence for the men locked up in that prison was 27 years. Peering through some of the windows, we could see young men shuffling off the bus, shackled, manacled, going into that prison, and they would be grandfathers before anybody would ever drive them out. And I know Sherry's heart was very tied into that reality, and Sherry never came to these prayer sessions, even though she was the spiritual heartbeat of the prison. So she was driving me to the bus stop. It was the end of my time at Pekin Prison. And as we drove past the men's prison, her hand went on mine, and she said, "Kathy, honey, I know you care a lot about those people over there in Iraq." And then she looked at the prison we were driving past, the men's prison, and she said, "At least our boys aren't over there killing children and brothers and mothers and fathers in Iraq. Our boys are in there." And all I can say is, sometimes I find hope in being haunted, and I need Sherry's words to haunt me.